This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. In this episode, I speak with Nik West, bass player with Prince and John Mayer and many, many other artists. We talk about how she's managed to find balance in her life and her experience about touring and working with some of the biggest names in music. We also speak about how she found her USP and how Dave Stewart from Eurythmics helped her find that USP. So enjoy the episode. Hey, it's James Taylor, and I'm very excited today to bring you our featured guest. Her name is Nik West, and Nik is a Los Angeles-based bass player and vocalist. Her credits include work with Dave Stewart of Eurythmics, Prince, John Mayer, and most recently as a special guest on American Idol. She is also the brainchild behind the Queen of Strings competition, discovering, inspiring, and teaching young women self-esteem and discipline on the instrument. So, Nik, welcome onto the show.
Hello.
So share with our listeners what's going on in your world just now.
Well, actually, I'm actually really excited about a project that I'm working on with John Blackwell, who played drums for Prince for, the last 15 years. And we're actually doing it's called the NWJB tour. So it's going to be really exciting to see, just for fans to just really see how we play together and the energy that we have and everything on stage. So that's my biggest project I'm working on right now.
So that relationship between the bass player and the drummer, a lot of when people are kind of working with bands or their producers or they're kind of trying to put something together, often they come as a pair, a great bass player and a great drummer if they're working a lot together. So talk to me about that relationship that you have with a drummer when you it's really in the pocket. Is it, how much is it a real kind of just natural, it's just something that works, or it doesn't, and how much is it you have to really kind of work and develop that over time with another player?
Yeah, there are some drummers that we play together and it's just a natural fit, you know what I'm saying? And then there's more often than not drummers that, we play together and either the drummer plays kind of a little ahead of the beats or right in the pocket or just a tad bit behind the pocket. So, for me, because I play and practice everything that I do with a metronome. So I'm kind of like a human metronome when I play the bass. So it's really, really easy for me to feel when a drummer is kind of swaying ahead or behind, the click or the pocket. And it's really important to be able to lock with the drummer.
And it's fascinating.
It's chemistry.
Exactly. It's really fascinating seeing, I was involved in a project and J.R. Robinson was the drummer on the project and most recorded drummer in history. And what I found very interesting just watching him from the side as we were filming was his, so the feel that he had, his upper body certainly was very kind of relaxed. It had a very, it was very kind of relaxed, almost slightly behind the beat. But his bass drum was absolutely bang on. It was like a metronome the whole time as well. So that must be a really big thing. And for you as a bass player, working with a drummer that just has great time, but can also play with that as well.
Right, exactly. And it just depends on the song or the type of feel that we're going for. Yes, we want to be kind of like right in the middle of the pocket, but there's sometimes where it does require for us to go, like you said, just a little behind the pocket. And it's good to be able to know that a drummer can adjust accordingly.
So how did you get started on the bass? What was the thing that kind of brought you to the bass? And at what point in your life playing the bass did you kind of go, actually, this is what I want to do. This is who I am as a person. I'm a bass player. What was that transition? What was that journey like?
It's very funny because I started out playing guitar at 13. I wanted to play guitar because my dad played guitar. And I decided at 16 that bass is something that I wanted to try out because I heard Michael Jackson's "You Want to Be Starting Something," and the bass line just drives the song. So my dad picked us up from school. I said, "What is that instrument?" He said, "That's a bass." The next day, he bought me a bass, and I wanted to play it. But the problem was, where I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, nobody wanted to let me play. No, none of the guys wanted to let me, kind of get my feet wet and play with them. And that's actually the reason why I became a solo artist to begin with, because in my hometown, like, I could not get a gig to save my life. Like, I'd practiced, I was really good at, just good, and I just got so discouraged because nobody wanted to see me playing the bass. Like, they're like, "You're a singer. What are you playing the bass for?" So it was really hard for me at first, and it kind of pushed me into just being a solo bassist, solo artist.
And so were you singing right from the start as well? Were you first and foremost, you kind of were a bass player, and then you started kind of singing in addition to that? Or were you kind of singing first and then the bass came along?
I was singing. So me and my sisters, my dad sat us down. I couldn't have been any more than maybe 3. And he sat us all down and he taught us different harmonies. He gave me my voice and gave all of my sisters their voices. And at that point, we come from a singing family. My dad, his brothers, they all have these really cool quartet groups and stuff that we used to grow up listening to. And so singing's always been in our blood. But when I started playing the bass, it was just a natural thing. I was singing with the bass. And when I got ready to record, I didn't think that I was a good enough singer to be an artist singing, which is why my first album was supposed to be an instrumental bass album.
I see.
Very weird, very strange.
And then at what point did you kind of go from just being someone, you were playing bass to actually, being a professional player? And this is kind of what you were doing. Was it straight from school or straight from college?
It was actually an accident. I uploaded a video on YouTube because I'd been watching YouTube videos so that I could learn just different things about the bass. I was never formally trained. I never went to school for it. I went to school for engineering, chemical engineering. So it's very different from playing the bass. And so when I started watching these videos, started learning how to play, started really, really learning how to play, I was like, well, maybe I should upload my first video. So I uploaded a video and ended up saying, okay, if I take the frets out of my Fender, will it sound like Jaco? I mean, I was just kind of wet behind the ears. I didn't know, a whole lot about gear at the time. So I asked one of my friends on MySpace or Facebook, one of the two, and he said, okay, well, why don't you just ask the guy that makes these basses? And I was like, okay, cool. So he gave me his email. I emailed the guy, and he's just like, hey, Nick, I'll get back to you when I get back to work in a few days. Then he went and he checked out my video, and he's like, wait a minute, you play 6-string bass? Whoa, you're actually really good. And that's how Fender endorsed me. I think a week later, I had an endorsement from Fender. And then 2 weeks after that, Dave Stewart of Eurythmics saw me on Fender's website.
I see.
He called me.
I see. And so, and then the transition to being in LA was quite natural after that point, because you were starting to kind of be on the scene and starting to work with people. And then, this gig then leads to another gig, and that leads to another gig. At what point did you make the transition to moving to LA?
Well, Dave Stewart kind of made me move to LA. I was doing a bunch of gigs for him. I was exclusively his bass player. Like, I wasn't playing bass for anyone else. I was living in New York at the time. I would go on tour with him and Orianthi, and we would do things with Sugarland together. And he's like, look, if I'm going to manage you, you've got to move to LA. So I left New York, moved to LA. And then from that point, that's when I met John Mayer. That's when I met a lot of other people through Dave Stewart.
I see. And then actually, you mentioned Sugarland. I was talking the other day to Annie Clements. Yep. The bass player in Sugarland as well, and she was talking about this thing, which is, as a girl, as a woman on the road with a band that's, let's say, predominantly male band, it adds a different kind of dynamic to things as well. And she said it can be actually a really good thing because it kind of, you kind of bring a different dynamic both to the sound of the band, but also just to the overall kind of vibe, especially as you're touring all the time. But you mentioned right at the very start, you were actually having a difficulty kind of getting a gig because no one wanted to have you in the band. So What was that all about? Do you find is in the music industry is sexism still as big a thing, or where does that tend to come from?
I think it was just, for me, I think it was just amongst my peers. The people that I grew up with, the people that I knew that were actually local in Arizona, gigging and doing different, cover bands, cover gigs and stuff. I wanted to really just get out there and that was a good way for me to really practice and get stamina, was by, getting some of these gigs. And I'd see they would hire guitar players and before they would even hire me, an actual bass player. So I think it was something that was difficult, which is why I actually shortened my name to Nik, because I would go on Craigslist and I would try to get these gigs as Nikki, and they'd say, oh, okay, this is a girl, we don't know, blah, blah, blah. So then when I actually shortened it to Nik, they thought it was a guy that was coming in. And then when I walked into the auditions, they saw that it was a girl. So that's actually how the name got shortened to Nik instead of Nikki.
So let's switch things up a little bit. What does the first hour of your day look like? A lot of our listeners are really intrigued by the lives of kind of professional musicians, people that may be touring or they're in a studio. But what does that first hour of your day actually look like?
First hour of my day is, and it depends. It's really hard for a musician like me to stay consistent because I travel so much and I'm in different time zones so much. But first hour of my day, I like to get up and I like to go outside in nature and just walk, because I find that walking around it just clears my mind and it gets me ready for whatever it is I need to do for the day. And then I have this little dry erase board that I take with me. And the night before, I put down what it is I want to get accomplished for the next day. And then at the end of the day, I check off everything that I've got accomplished for the day. So I'm really, really studious and really about going outside and sucking up nature. I mean, it just naturally helps me. That's focus.
Awesome, and I love the idea of the board having putting those tasks up, and so and at the end of the day that must it kind of feels good. I do something similar actually, just with a little cue card, just that you put my 3 things, my top 3 things you want to accomplish today, and at the end of the day being able to just kind of rip up that card and throw it in the trash can.
Feels great.
It feels
right?
great. It feels like if I've achieved nothing else, I've achieved those those things today.
Yeah.
And what would you say is your biggest weakness as a music artist and as a creative person?
Ooh, that's a really good one. I'd say, my biggest weakness is really discipline. It's so terrible that I'm saying this, but I'm being transparent. Ever since I was a little girl, I've been very just terrible at disciplining myself. I was diagnosed with ADD when I was 7 years old, and my mom said, oh, no, we're not going to put her on medication. You just give her more homework. So for me, it's about filling up my day with lots of things to do, and it's hard for me to focus for long periods of time on things. So if I'm practicing or playing the bass, I have to sit in front of the TV, watch Family Guy, my favorite show, turn the metronome on, and practice right in front of the TV. And then on the commercial, I have to go outside and look at something or get online and then come back to it. I have to take lots of breaks because I'm not focused. And
the ADD thing, I mean, that's obviously very, very common in this industry. I speak to the two things I see lots of people with ADD on is, one is obviously in music and the creative arts in general, and the other one is entrepreneurs. I was at an event recently where there was 2,000 entrepreneurs in this room. And there was someone there, and I can't remember the name. It was a gentleman who's a specialist actually in ADD, and just talking about it. And he just asked a couple of questions. And he said, if this is you, put your hand up, and if this is you, put your hand up. And by the end of those 5 questions, it was something like 3/4 of the room still had their hands up. And so, which is very interesting when you see entrepreneurs and creative individuals. So, but how have you learned to kind of manage that though?
Well, that actually, I think one of the questions you asked is maybe a favorite record or a favorite book.
Yeah.
It actually came through a favorite book. So there's a book called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. Yep. I mean, he's a really great entrepreneur, and just I listen to his, MP3s and everything while I'm in the car. It's kind of okay, you've got a frog sitting there. It's how do you eat a frog? It's piece by piece you eat a frog. It's very strange, but you'll get it if you read the book. And it's about time management. It's about really focusing on, you have task A, B, C, and D. Okay, which one is the most important that needs to be done? What other ones can you delegate to someone else to do? So I think my biggest problem was multitasking and feeling like, okay, I can do everything and I have to take lots of breaks. But I think for me, being able to delegate and trust other people to handle certain aspects of things really helped me out. So definitely Eat That Frog is a great book on time management and balancing your life.
So if you feel like discipline is a weakness, what would you say on the flip side? What would you say is your biggest strength?
My biggest strength, I would say, is this. Okay, this sounds strange. I think like my confidence on stage. Like I think a lot of people with ADD that have focus issues, like they're down for anything. Like I just get on stage, I jump around, I just act crazy, act a fool, and the audience sucks it up. Like they love it so much. And I think that's my greatest strength, is being able to entertain people and make them feel really good and make them laugh. And I mean, my show is just full of a lot of different dynamics. And I think even in real life, I'm a goofball. Like I make people laugh, I make people smile. and I really take to heart, like mean people. I kind of like mean people because I use them as a challenge. Like, okay, I'm going to make that mean person smile today, So I think my greatest strength is my confidence with people.
But, that thing of like, usually when I think of bass players, and I've had the good fortune of working with some great, guys like Nathan East and Bill Wyman and all, a bunch of, and a good friend of mine is a bass player in Simple Minds just now. But, they tend to be like, sit back more. And so their whole vibe on stage is like, sit back, and I'm trying to think examples of bass players who kind of come to the fore like that. So I think obviously guitar players, because guitar players love doing that kind of stuff anyway.
Yeah.
but it's slightly more unusual for bass players. I mean, maybe the bass player in Red Hot Chili Peppers is maybe one example of that.
Yeah, so Verdine White from Earth, Wind and Fire.
Exactly. So these are the kind of guys that you look at and you kind of saw what they were doing and you saw vibe, or it's just natural. It's a natural thing that you wanted to do anyway.
Okay, so that comes in two parts. First, I've always been really rambunctious. I've always had a lot of energy. When I first started getting on stage, I was really reserved, and I was playing as if I was playing as a sideman for other people. Really reserved, laid back, just grooving, right? Yeah. And then my sister told me, she says, all of that energy that you have, you're always doing cartwheels, you're always doing flips and everything. Why don't you do crazy stuff like that on stage? Like just take it all to the stage. Look at Verdine White from Earth, Wind and Fire. And we were watching some award show, and he was just dancing around, and I'm like, oh my God, I can do that. And then we saw Flea jumping up and down, and she's just like, you can do that. And I'm like, all right. I mean, it's me anyway, but to see other bass players doing it just validates it, for me. Validated it.
Awesome. And, you've got all these different projects on the go, but what is the one thing that you're working on just now that is exciting you the most?
Well, I finished my EP, so that's amazing. We just toured that, the Bass in Your Face tour. But John Blackwell, the Nik West and John Blackwell tour that's coming up, just being able to work with him, because I've worked with lots of great musicians, and I think having a person around that's you're afraid to play with is the best thing to ever happen to you, because all it's going to do is just make me even that much better. I mean, it's just, I'm so excited about it because I'm so afraid. and so the fact that he loves my stuff is just, amazing. He's like, okay, Nik, I knew you were a good bass player, but I didn't know your stuff was this great. I mean, this stuff is funky. And so that excited me. And I'm like, okay, he loves my stuff. Now I'm more nervous.
and are you doing live shows, and are you also doing like clinics and things, so where bass players and drummers can go and kind of learn from you as well?
Yes. So we're doing like a full tour, and as well as a clinic. So the cities that we'll be in, if there's guitar centers or some mom and pop music shops, we're going to be doing clinics there.
Awesome. And what we'll do is on the show notes here, we'll put the links to your website so people can learn more and find out all the stuff that you're up to just now as well. So tell us about a time where you worked on a project, you gave it your all, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out the way you wanted. And more importantly, what was the lessons that you took away from that experience?
Oh, well, I feel like, gosh, there's been a couple of there's been a few projects that I've worked on and just didn't. I mean, musically speaking, or just in general.
It could be musically, or it could be in general. Completely up to yourself.
I think for me, it's the whole stigma of trying to play like someone else, trying to. Well, I have to be as good as this person. Like, oh my God, Jocko, he's so amazing. Like, I have to do this. And then you go on YouTube and you see all these other guys doing all of this crazy stuff. And it's like, I have to be just as good as that. I have to do this. I have to do that. And I think for a long time, that was a stigma for me. And, you know, I kind of turned it into a project, turned it into something that I wanted to do. Okay, I have to play that song, and I want to play that song just like he played that song. And if I don't do it like that, then I'm a failure, you know. And I did not. Seriously, took me like a year to learn one of these songs that I actually have learned and played really well in my videos now. But it took me a really, really long time. And I just felt like, okay, I'm just going to give up on this. I'm just not going to do it. And I found that kind of taking that and just putting it to the side and then going off to do something else, it's kind of like a year and a half later, I come back to this same song or come back to the same type of finger work on my fretboard, and it's like cake. So I think for me, it's just a matter of not thinking so hard about it and not worrying about failing. I think the people that are the most successful are the ones that have failed many times, but they just keep getting up again. I mean, I've taken different routes to get to where I am. Being a sideman for me, like, that really helped me as far as my career and getting known and getting seen on stages. But I just knew after doing that for a while, okay, this isn't me. Like, I have to go crazy. It's time for me to go crazy on stage. And it was really hard for me to leave those situations because I'd gained so much from, say, like Dave Stewart and the other people that I've worked with. And they just knew at a certain point when the Mohawk came on, okay, she's ready to do her own thing. We got to let her fly. We got to let her fly and do her thing. So definitely for me, it's just knowing that it's okay to fail and to just keep getting back up and trying again.
But that's a hard leap, going from being a side player to in like even like a huge band, with a huge artist, to, you know, there's that great documentary 20 Feet from Stardom, which I don't know if you've seen yet, but I think it's Bruce Springsteen. He says a line in it where he says, you know, that 20 feet from the, you know, being a side man or side woman in a band to being on the front of the stage, and it's you, it's on you, people are there to see you, is the longest 20 feet in the world. So, I mean, how did you get your kind of head in a place to say, okay, I'm getting all these offers, I could, you know, be, you know, huge, just doing, you know, being the go-to person as a bass player, to actually saying, actually, no, that's not going to be my focus. My focus is actually going to be on building, you know, Nik West as a brand and as a player.
Well, I think there's a few people, I won't mention their names, but they're very notable bass players that have played with really one of the most successful artists of all time. I was told that, okay, you are young, you're doing your thing, like, you have a look, you have a sound, you have something that you have that's special. And if you get pigeonholed into just being a sideman and you just do that for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, by the time you want to branch out and just do your own thing, you know, you might be like this person was telling, she's like, I'm past my prime. Like, it's a different day. I'm past my prime. I should have done it when I was younger, you know? And so, I mean, that really, really helped me to be able to make a decision, you know? And then sometimes you just have that gut feeling. Like, I went somewhere and I was offered like the largest gig of my life, like being paid more money than I'd ever seen before. And when I got done, the person was just like, you have the job. It's yours if you want it. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so great. I went back to my hotel room and I literally walked in my hotel room and then just like fell to my knees and started crying because something inside of me knew that though this deal was like the greatest deal ever and anybody would kill to have this deal, it just wasn't my path. It just wasn't where I was supposed to be, where I was supposed to go. So I had to turn it down. I had to turn that gig down, and to this day, I don't regret it. So I don't know. I just feel like doing it on my own has been great because I get to learn the nuts and bolts of how the industry really works.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, building my own blueprint so that if I wanted to have a protege, which people are always like, hey, can I be your protege? If I wanted to do that, at a certain point, I'd be able to do it because I know how the nuts and bolts work of this thing.
You've been through that journey.
Exactly.
So tell us about an aha idea, or I mean that sounds like that was kind of one of them, where an aha idea or light bulb moment in your life, and this incredible journey that you've had, where you kind of like it just kind of the light went on and you just went, okay, this is what I need to do, or you made some kind of distinction, you reached some kind of understanding about something that was really important to you.
I think when okay, so I went through a transition where I changed my hair. I mean, it sounds silly, but something as simple as changing my hair. I mean, I have really long, curly, big hair. And this is what people were used to seeing on stage when I was playing for Dave Stewart and just going around touring and stuff. That's what they were used to seeing. And then Dave Stewart and I had a conversation, and he says, do you want to be trendy or do you want to be a classic? And I was like, well, I mean, I love trends. Like, I love really trendy things. He's like, no. Trendy is something that comes and goes. A classic is something that can stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I want to be a classic. And he's just like, well, the main thing that you're going to have to learn is the art of differentiation. How can you differentiate yourself from any other? We'll just like narrow it down. Female bass player, singer that's out there. How do you differentiate yourself from them? Visually, musically, and on stage. How can you do that? And for me, it was as simple as changing the hair. When we changed the hair and I put on this mohawk that was shaped like a bass clef, it's almost as if light bulbs went off in other people's heads. Said, oh my God, okay, I've never seen that before. Okay, that's different. And it made them pay attention to whatever else that I had to offer that made me different from everyone else. And I think for me, that was that aha moment, the art of differentiation. How do you make yourself different?
I remember reading an article, I think it was with Slash, talking about his look. And, someone said to me, what was it? And it was actually, for him, it was actually quite a deliberate thing to have that look and that kind of that vibe he's kind of got happening. So it was, and that I just have to pick up a little doll or something with that look, and it's him. So it's like, yes. I would imagine in your case it's you, but is there a danger though? So while you're going to become known, that's you, that's that thing, the girl with the great bass player with the hair and you can sing and everything. Is there a danger that you're going to get bored with that and want to change it? And so what's your take on that? And what kind of advice did you get from Dave Stewart about that stuff?
I think I don't know that I get bored with it because it comes in all different colors. We can bling it out. There's so many different things we can do with it.
See, and to be honest, us guys are so boring when it comes to this stuff. You girls have had all the fun.
I mean, and to be honest with you, I feel differently. I feel differently. It's strange, but with just my natural hair, I feel like, natural Nikki. When I'm out walking, I'm visible to people, and I'm just my natural self. When I put that mohawk on, it's like a rock star. I have permission now to act crazy on stage because I am this superhero with this crazy hair. And I think, and that really helps me perform it on stage.
Yeah. It's like it's like an actress then. You're like an actor. You're taking on this whole thing that's kind of empowering you to go and deliver that performance.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I mean, it helps me. And I mean, at a certain point, because artists, we keep reinventing ourselves and stuff. At a certain point, it's only healthy to change it up even more.
So you're gonna have to be like a Madonna, that just every couple of years she defines something and it's a look and it's like incredible, and then she just switches up just when you think you're at least expecting it. So obviously you've had kind of great mentors like with Dave Stewart giving you advice, but what other advice have you received about this music career that you've had, or how to navigate your way around what is a very, very competitive industry and has lots of pitfalls to it?
Well, some of the best advice I got was from Prince. He told me, he said, Nik, there were 5 great bands when I was coming out. I was coming out and I looked around. There was Earth, Wind, and Fire, the Ohio Players, all these great bands. And I did not know how I was going to be noticed, how I was going to break in to the market, because they were just dominating the scene with the type of music he wanted to do. And he's just like, and I had to figure out how to break through and how to be noticed, how to be different. And the way that I did it was I just said, I'm going to just be myself. He's like, I'm this guy where at first, like, people would, like, the black crowds would like throw stuff at him. Like, he got booed off the stage because he's this black guy over there, like, jumping around the stage, like playing this rock music and trying to do it like that. And they're like, wait, what is this? Like, this is the funk era. What are you doing with this rock? And he just decided, he's like, I'm just going to be myself. I'm going to mix my influences and just do what I do. And so when I went to Paisley Park, actually for the first time in 2012, he had me play Larry Graham, Sly and the Family Stone bass line. And he's just like, do you know it? I'm like, yeah, I think I know it. But I was so nervous and so afraid, because I'm like, this is Prince. Like, this is the person I wanted to meet forever, right? He told me, stop freezing up, because I froze. He asked me to play the song. He sat down at the piano. I got ready to play it and my hands would not move. And he said, what's the matter? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't play. And he's like, okay, let me tell you something. I'm not asking you to be your favorite bass player, not asking you to be Marcus Miller, not asking you to be Larry Graham. All I'm doing is I'm asking you to be Nik West. That's all I care about. If you weren't good at what you do, trust me, you wouldn't be here. So stop worrying about trying to be any other bass player that you think that I want you to be. I want you to just be you. That's what you have to do. And that was some of the greatest advice I'd ever received. Like, just be you and sit comfortable in that, and own it.
That's awesome. I mean, but what, to be able to work with other players like that, or at that kind of level, and to also, I would imagine to be on stage. So like, there's obviously verbal things they're saying to you, like about, okay, this is some advice that we give, but all those kind of like non-verbal things, like just seeing how they act, or maybe around other people, how they act on stage, stagecraft stuff that happens. I would imagine would be really interesting to kind of learn from some of these great players.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, just watching Prince and like watching John Blackwell, watching Sheila E., watching Dave Stewart, watching John Mayer, just the appeal that they have.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's almost as if they're enigmas, and it looks like they're not trying. It just looks like they are just comfortable and confident in who they are, to where they're just like, hey, let me do this. I'm going to do this for you. And the crowd just loves it because it's just them. They don't try to be anyone else but them, which makes them legend.
So like all those players you're talking about, kind of just getting the opportunity to go and try out with something like Prince or the John Mayer thing, and how do those opportunities arise? So let's say, like for me, I'm not a bass player. I don't know that well, but someone that's maybe like this 17-year-old, 18-year-old just coming in, young girl, she wants to play at that level. How do those opportunities arise? How do you get that call? What are the steps that can have to happen before then in order to get to that place? Have you ever heard of serendipity? Yes. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. Yeah. And a lot of times, sometimes we don't think we're ready, so we kind of
I don't know, just stay in our basement, or don't upload the video, or don't send that person a message that it's like, oh my gosh, this person's too big. Why should I send them a message? They're not going to read it anyway. Hey, you got to take chances. That's what I did. Like, I took chances. I didn't know John Mayer was showing up at this gig with Dave Stewart. He showed up, and I'm like, well, I'm going to just play. I'm just going to do what I do. And then at the end of the day, after you've practiced and you're prepared, preparation meets opportunity, then I believe you have to be likable. People have to like you. You have to be able to talk to other people. You have to be able to connect. And I think that's like I said, one of my strengths, being able to connect with people. And you have to be confident, and people have to know that without being, egotistical. So I think
you basically got to be you got to be a good hang. Like if I'm going to be on a tour bus with you for the next 6 months, doing this tour, it's a worldwide tour to promote this album, and I've got to know that not only are you a great player, but you're going to be a good person to have on the road.
Exactly. And it's really rare to find that. There are a lot of great musicians, and like young prodigies, 12, 13, and older prodigies. They're amazing at their instruments, and they just look down and they play, and they're just so amazing, but they don't have any personality.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's I think what stops a lot of people from making it to the next level.
And it's
like you said, people want a good hang.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We were speaking earlier about Nathan East, and a good opportunity to work with Nate on a couple of occasions. And there's a perfect example of someone's who's a great player, and when he needs to step up and do his thing, he absolutely does that. But he's also just one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in this business. Yes. And just very kind of giving, just very warm, and he's the kind of person you'd be more than happy to be on a long tour with. You'd be no problems with that person.
He's definitely one of the nicest people I've ever met, and he's been talking about doing this project, East meets West, because I'm in West and he's in East. Mm-hmm. So he came up with the project title, and we'll get working on that when we settle down a little bit. But he's definitely one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Awesome. And so let's talk to, we haven't talked as much about like gear or technology or anything. And I know that online there's going to be lots of places where bass players listening can go and check out, what gear you're using, basses, bass amps. But talk to me a little bit about, what's on your phone? What are the apps that you're using? What are the ones that you would recommend to other musicians that they maybe check out?
Okay, so there's something called Rhymer's Block for songwriters and, people that are musicians that maybe are trying to do songwriting. It's called Rhymer's Block. So you can put like a whole sentence in, and then it'll kind of start helping you compose. Okay, well, this goes with this. They're near rhymes. This could make it, one good paragraph of a song, Yeah. So that's a really good app that I love. There's another one that is, I'd say it's mainly for people that like me. I've never been formally trained, so just reading notes and reading rhythms. There's an app called Read Rhythms, and it pretty much just like there's a metronome going the whole time, and it shows you how to read a rhythm, and then it asks you to kind of repeat it and do it, and then it clocks if you're a tad behind the metronome, right on top of it, or a little in front of it. So it really helps you with your rhythm sight reading and your timing. So I love those two apps the best.
Great, and we'll definitely put these on the show notes. So if you people go to icmponline.com/podcast, they'll be able to just put Nik West in the search bar, and they'll be able to find the links for these as well. So we spoke a minute ago about books, and you mentioned the book there from Brian Tracy about Eat That Frog.
Yes.
But if there was one record that you were to recommend our listeners check out, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. So there's one? Just one?
Just one. This is always the hardest one. When I speak to musicians, I just ask them just one album is the hardest one.
Oh man. That's tough.
What was
it's gotta be like a
what was the record? I mean, you mentioned the Michael Jackson one at the start, but was there a record that you just played time and time and time and time again. What was that thing that was just on constant repeat for you when you were kind of coming up, you were learning bass, and you just kind of wanted to be inspired?
Well, there are three actually. I don't like, and they were in rotation, combination: Sly and the Family Stone, Prince and the Revolution, and Lenny Kravitz has this album out that it's like a funk, kind of like a funk album, Black and White America. And for me as a bass player, listening to the way that Lenny interprets the bass and the bass tones, I really like, because he's kind of got this like, gosh, I don't know, like Hendrix meets Zeppelin meets Beatles, like all of his favorite kind of people all wrapped up into one, and a little bit of like Prince kind of sounds in there. And I just love it, because for me, like when he told me the way he gets his sound on the bass, because sometimes he'll slap it on the album and I'm like, I can't get my bass to sound like that, but it's the same, pretty much the same bass as you have. And he's like, I use flat wounds. And I'm like, who slaps with flat wounds? Nobody does that. Really? And he's just like, yeah. And if you were to go on tour with me, you'd have to be playing with flat wounds. So I think, gosh, it was a combination of those three. But I will say a song by Prince called Let's Work was a song that I probably played the most out of all songs, because when I was really getting into the funk and learning how to slap, I said, I am going to learn this song if it takes my life. And I'm going to learn it right. So definitely Let's Work by Prince. So.
And of the Sly and the Family Stone, which one should our listeners check out?
There's actually a greatest hits where he's in red, and he's got the red hat on, the cover of I saw the vinyl cover.
Yeah.
The greatest hits, Sly and the Family Stone. So that's the one that I check out, and it's still on my wall to this day. So. Well,
we'll definitely put these on the show notes as well. And then the final question I had for you, Nik, is imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and had to start from scratch. So all you have is your bass and the knowledge that you've acquired over your years of music. What would you do? How would you restart things?
Wow. I would take my bass, upload some videos to YouTube, get myself as visible as possible, figure out how to make myself, actually check out what everyone else is doing, find out how to make myself different from them, and only compete against myself. Not try to compete against other people that are already out there doing it.
That's great.
Biggest competition is myself.
And I feel this whole interview has been a masterclass in differentiation, and which is great. So so Dave Stewart, he's taught you well. He's taught you very well.
Thank you,
Nik. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great speaking to you, and I look forward to catching if you're in London. I look forward to coming along to one of the shows as well. And I wish you all the best with the new projects you've got happening, and I hope that album, that project with Nathan East works out, because I'll be one of the first to come along to that show.
Definitely. It's great talking to you.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.